So recently I saw a video by Davron on Sonic the Hedgehog 4 and how it's the worst Sonic game he's played. It's a good video, I highly recommend checking his channel out. And it got me thinking, was it that bad? I haven't played Sonic 4 in a long time, 6 years to be precise. I streamed them on YouTube and I remember being fair to them. Truth be told, I was playing on completed save files with all emeralds, so there was that handicap. But ever since Sonic 4's release, it has gained quite the fan backlash for not being what was to be expected for a canonical continuation of Sonic 3. It used modern Sonic, it had the homing attack, all the zones were based on old stages, the music being forgettable, and the physics? Well, if you want to hear a Sonic fan quote Sir Isaac Newton, make them play this game. And I liked it, especially episode 2 that came out 2 years later. I don't think the games were that bad to be considered one of the worst games of the franchise. Then again, I am someone who would choose Sonic Forces over Sonic Colors, so my opinion isn't exactly objective. So more than a decade since release and less than since I last played them, is Sonic the Hedgehog 4 that bad? To skip to the end, kind of. But it's more about what the game represents rather than the game itself. As a game, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 is lackluster. The game invokes nostalgia like a frying pan to the face. All the zones are copies of previous zones: Green Hill, Casino Night, Labyrinth, and Metropolis. Even the special stage and Splash Hill's boss are direct copies of Sonic the Hedgehog's, all overly saturated and given a pseudo cel-shaded style, which I guess was a way to try and mimic the 16-bit game style with a HD filter, but looks garish and headache-inducing after a while. The gameplay though feels like a return to form, for the most part. Speeding through loops and destroying badniks feels as rewarding as ever, yet with the inclusion of the homing attack, the gameplay still manages to be a bit challenging, especially when you need to use the homing attack on a string of badniks over bottomless pits. The homing attack was a point of contention for a lot of fans, and in hindsight, I agree. It's not something a game like this needed. A classic style game needs a classic style game design philosophies, and throwing in a modern component kinda screws things up. Luckily, the level design is designed to include it, such as the aforementioned badnik lineups as well as stage gimmicks. Now this is where I have a problem. You see, every stage, mostly the second and third of each zone, has a gimmick that is used once and never again. The vines and ziplines in Splash Hill, the cards in Casino Street, the cards and boulders in Lost Labyrinth, and the death wall in Mad Gear. Unique gimmicks that could be expanded into full zones, but offer nothing more than one-time challenges to fight off boredom. I will agree and say that the physics are a bit off, but running up a wall with little to no build-up to me is just funny. What isn't funny is having to hold the direction after launching up a spring, otherwise you will fall like a rock, missing your intended landing spot. How was this not a problem for people 13 years ago? Apparently, it wasn't that big a deal. Everyone was complaining about the use of modern Sonic and sticking to walls, and the lack of earning extra lives in Sonic Colors, which was a legitimate complaint, and Sega tried to pull the same crap in Lost World, but that was immediately patched out. The only time the physics seem to work properly is in the special stages. I said they were basically copies of Sonic 1, but that's just surface level. You control the stage, not Sonic, guiding him to the emerald while avoiding goalposts, collecting rings for gates, and time bonuses. They're challenging and have a steady difficulty curve as you collect the emeralds, but if you're playing them on the Wii or a smartphone, forget about them. You will break something. Finally, there's the music. I said in my review in 2011 that I liked it. I do not. It's not the worst soundtrack to a Sonic game I've heard, but you'll be hard-pressed to name a single track beyond Splash Hill Act 1 and the boss theme. I know the intention was to emulate the music of the classic games, but the Mega Genesis Drive had a very distinct soundboard that is very hard to emulate. And I originally played this on the Wii, so the music sounded much more compressed to fit within Nintendo's file size limit. Again, I don't think Sonic 4 Episode 1 is that bad of a game. It's taken its own spin on a 2D Sonic game, for better or worse, but that's the crutch of the problem with Sonic 4. It shouldn't be Sonic the Hedgehog 4. Apparently, Dimps was working on a Sonic game for the smartphones in 2009 before being told to port it to all the console's digital stores and rebrand it as Sonic the Hedgehog 4 An Episodic Adventure. Why? Because it would be guaranteed to sell on the name alone. That's how dumb Sega thought we were back in 2010. Not the fact that it was a new 2D game, not the fact that it's a Sonic the Hedgehog game, but the fact that it was a sequel to Sonic 3. Knowing this now, it makes sense as to why this game plays the way it plays. It feels like a continuation of the Advance and Rush games. They literally could have called it anything else. Sonic DL, Digital, Overdrive, Legends, Prime. Nope, none of those. That's why this game is revered as bad as it is. Sonic 4 Episode 2 fared a lot better than Episode 1, but it was the final death nail in the series. From the outset, it's an homage to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Tails and all, but had the right mind to not carry on what its predecessor did. Visually, the game looks 2.5D, akin to Generations. No longer are we subjected to migraine-inducing saturated colors. It's a lot more softer and detailed. While the comparisons to classic games are still there, they're not as blatant. Aside from Sky Fortress, which is just Sky Chase and Wing Fortress, oh hooray, you combine the names to make a new one! The zones in Episode 2 are more imaginative and lead to creative set pieces, Oil Desert being the standout. Even the Sylvania Castle boss tricks you into thinking it's a copy of Aquatic Ruins. But that's where the good ends. The bosses are just painful to sit through. They're not hard, it's just a waiting game for Eggman to show his dumb face. Unfortunately, Oil Desert has the most boring boss. You just climb boxes and don't get crushed by them. Plus, this sign here telling you to use the power move to beat it. Oh yes, with the inclusion of Tails, you can perform combo moves such as flying, swimming, and rolling. It's a cute and unique gimmick as it adds to problem solving, though with every stage signaling what to do as to where the obvious death pits are, it's less problem solving and more, "Are you awake?" Which is a shame because the level design is a lot more diverse with different paths and no one-time level gimmicks, for the most part. Plus, it invites exploration by hiding a red star ring in each main stage. The only major comparison to Sonic 2 is the special stages. They're a direct copy of the half-pipes, but with more elements to help or harm you. Overall, Episode 2 is a much-needed improvement over Episode 1, but it was too little, too late. Not to mention, you cannot play as Tails in single player, which hampered everyone's expectations for Tails' inclusion. Plus, if you own both episodes, you unlock Episode Metal, where you play through 4 acts from Episode 1 as Metal Sonic in reverse order. It's nothing special other than adding to the story of Episode 2. That's right, Episode 2 had a story involving Little Planet and Metal's return. It all came to a head where the Death Egg Mark II completely encapsulated the Dwarf Planet and then... nothing. There is no happy ending to this game as it was meant to conclude with Episode 3 that never came to fruition. Other than being 2D, Sonic 4 offers nothing at being a true Sonic 4 experience. Though Episode 2 was the better of the two games, it did little to keep the momentum going. We had to wait 5 years to get Sonic Mania, a more true successor to Sonic 3, and acts as a what if Sonic was made for the Sega Saturn and didn't try to shift to 3D? While that might not be the intention of the developers or Sega, it certainly comes across as such, ticking every box that fans wanted at the time. And now we have God damn it. And now we have Sonic Superstars, something that Sonic 4 could and should have been, a 2.5D game that expands on the original formula. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 was nothing more than a lie of a game, built up on a totem of nostalgia only to crumble at the weight of expectations and buried under the poor decision making and harsh reviews from fans and critics. But I refute the argument that Sega is trying to bury the series. Was it their best? No. But even their best efforts like the Advance series, Generations, and even the time capsule that is Knuckles Chaotix have not seen ports or remasters. Yet Sonic the Fighters and Sonic Colors have. So there is hope. To close this out, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 is not a bad game, but it's not a good one either. It's just not what Sonic 4 was supposed to be.